So, you figure theft is all about diamonds and getaway cars? Adorable. America's criminals have broader horizons. We've dug up 49 of the most bizarre things swiped across the states. Prepare for some truly baffling five-finger discounts where the loot is often stranger than the crime itself. Let's just say, some of these thieves weren't exactly aiming for a spread in Forbes. 1. Picture this. California, land of sunshine and grand larceny of festive decor. Someone, clearly not on Santa's nice list, decided an 18-foot inflatable Santa would improve their questionable living room. This Yuletide heist happened just before Christmas, devastating local kids who probably thought the Grinch's less competent cousin struck. Thankfully, a viral social media campaign shamed the perpetrators into returning the Jolly Giant. Proof that holiday spirit or fear of internet infamy always wins. Or maybe they just lacked a long enough extension cord. 2. Next, a crime redefining go big or go home. In Pennsylvania, some industrious types didn't just fancy petty theft. They aimed for an entire 10-ton steel bridge. Yes, a bridge. These weren't amateurs. They brought heavy machinery, dismantled it piece by piece, and then audaciously sold it for scrap. The logistical planning is almost impressive in a terrifying what's next kind of way. One wonders if they left a gone fishing sign for confused commuters. 3. From grand structures to historical fragments, thieves in New Jersey swiped a section of the Berlin Wall from a museum. This wasn't just any brick. It's a potent symbol. One wonders about the thief's motives, a tiny Cold War reenactment, or a deep hatred for graffiti. The significant artifact was recovered after an international collector unwittingly bought it. Imagine that acquisition story. Oh, some shifty guy by the docks. Seemed legit. 4. In Rhode Island, someone decided that a local school's replica of the Statue of Liberty was a little too complete. So they did the only logical thing, they stole its head. This wasn't some flimsy plastic affair. The head was made of bronze and worth a pretty penny. Thousands of dollars, in fact. What do you even do with a stolen Statue of Liberty head? Use it as a very patriotic, very conspicuous paperweight? It was eventually found months later in a nearby scrapyard, which is a rather ignominious end for Lady Liberty's noggin. Amazingly, the thieves were never charged, perhaps because the authorities couldn't face the paperwork involved in beheading of a national symbol, sort of. 5. Californians, it seems, have a taste for the unusual when it comes to heists. This time, thieves targeted a truck carrying a whopping 10 tons of avocados, valued at nearly $30,000. At the time, avocados were apparently the new gold, making this a surprisingly lucrative, if rather green, crime. The police, clearly having a bit of fun, dubbed the incident Guacageddon. You have to admire that. One can only imagine the thieves' getaway plan involved a very large bowl and an industrial quantity of tortilla chips. Were they planning to open the world's most aggressively stocked guacamole stand? The world may never know. 6. Art heists always have a certain mystique, don't they? In 2002, a Rembrandt painting, casually valued at over $20 million, vanished from a New York gallery. This wasn't a clumsy snatch and grab. It was an elaborate operation, the kind you see in movies where everyone wears turtlenecks and communicates via earpieces. Unfortunately, unlike the movies, this masterpiece was never recovered, cementing its place as one of the great unsolved art thefts. It's probably hanging in some villain's secret lair, right next to their collection of stolen dinosaur eggs and a slightly used 10-ton bridge. You know, for ambiance. 7. Apparently, stealing replicas of the Statue of Liberty is a bit of a trend, or perhaps a very niche criminal hobby. Over in Pennsylvania, a 10-foot version of Lady Liberty was plucked from a local park. This statue, weighing over 1,000 pounds and made of copper, wasn't exactly pocket-sized. The thieves must have been exceptionally quiet, or the local park security was on a very long coffee break. After a massive search, it was found in a scrapyard, damaged beyond repair. It seems some people just can't appreciate patriotic garden ornaments without wanting to melt them down. So much for, give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to be scrap metal. 8. If stealing historical artifacts wasn't niche enough, How about pilfering prehistoric ones? A group of thieves in Colorado decided to target a private collection of dinosaur eggs. These weren't your average omelet ingredients. These eggs were millions of years old and worth several $1,000,000. Imagine the audacity. All right, lads, tonight we're hitting the fossil guy. They managed to offload them to a black market dealer, because of course there's a black market for dinosaur eggs. Thankfully, a sting operation recovered the ancient treasures. One hopes the thieves didn't try to incubate them first. That would be a whole other level of weird. 9. California makes another appearance, this time with a nutty crime, literally. Farmers reported the theft of 50,000 pounds of walnuts, worth over $200,000. That's a lot of trail mix. The thieves weren't exactly criminal masterminds relying on stealth. They used forged documents posed as delivery drivers and simply hauled the nuts away. It's almost disappointingly straightforward for such a large quantity of, well, nuts. The case cracked open weeks later when police tracked the stolen goods to a warehouse. Probably smelled it from a mile away. I wonder if they were planning to corner the market on Waldorf salads. 10. Brace yourselves for this one. In 2007, someone managed to steal a piece of the original US Constitution. Not a copy, not a replica, but an actual fragment of the foundational document, valued at a cool $10 million. This happened at a private museum in Washington, D.C. It's hard to fathom the sheer nerve. What do you do with a stolen piece of the Constitution? Frame it and put it next to your live, laugh, love sign? Despite a nationwide search, this tiny but incredibly significant piece of American history has never been recovered. Its whereabouts remain a baffling mystery, possibly tucked away in someone's very seditious sock drawer. 11. For those who appreciate vintage travel, this next one is a heartbreaker. A historic railroad car, a luxurious Pullman car from the early 20th century valued at over $2 million, was stolen from a museum in California. This wasn't a simple hot wiring job. The entire car was removed from its tracks and spirited away in the dead of night. How does one even begin to conceal a stolen Pullman car? Do you just park it in your driveway and hope the neighbors are very unobservant? It was eventually recovered months later after a nationwide search, presumably looking rather out of place in someone's oversized garage. 12. If you're going to steal, why not aim for something shiny? In 2006, a gold bar weighing over 100 pounds and worth $3 million was expertly lifted from a vault in a high-security facility in New York. This wasn't a smash and grab. The thief employed a highly calculated manner, which sounds much more sophisticated than grabbed it and ran like heck. The gold bar was eventually recovered after a massive investigation, though the thief themselves performed a rather impressive vanishing act. Perhaps they melted the bar down to make a very conspicuous, very heavy suit of armor. 13. Some thieves aim high, literally. A full-sized helicopter engine, worth over $1 million, was stolen from a military hangar in Texas. This wasn't just a case of someone needing a spare part for their personal chopper. The theft occurred under the cover of night, and the culprits seemed to possess a disturbingly good understanding of aviation machinery. The engine was never recovered, leading authorities to speculate it might have been sold for black market use. One shudders to think what kind of unregulated engine-swapped monstrosity is now flying around out there. Or maybe it's powering a really impressive go-kart. 14. Comic book collectors. Look away now. In Ohio, a thief made off with an entire collection of rare comic books valued at over $3 million. We're talking early editions of Superman, Batman, the kind of stuff that makes grown men weep. These weren't just comics. They were cultural touchstones. The collection was eventually tracked down, piece by piece, as items began appearing at various auctions. It's like a treasure hunt, but for stolen paper. Some of the rarest issues, however, remain missing, presumably now part of some supervillain's personal library, used for evil bedtime reading. 15. Now, this is ambitious. In 2008, thieves in Jamaica, Queens, New York, yes, the borough, not the island, decided they needed a beach. So they stole one. Or, more accurately, they hauled away 500 tons of sand from a private beach property. Investigators believe the sand was sold to construction companies, which makes a sort of grim, utilitarian sense. Locals quipped that even the ocean couldn't hold on to its belongings in New York. One wonders if the thieves left little buckets and spades behind as a calling card. At least they didn't try to take the water. 16. Car enthusiasts, prepare for a pang of sorrow. A classic 1966 Mustang, lovingly restored to its original glory, was stolen right out of a car show in Nevada. This beauty was one of the main attractions, a gleaming testament to American muscle. The thieves managed to drive it off the lot, which is bold, to say the least. Imagine the panic. Thankfully, this story has a relatively happy ending. The Mustang was quickly tracked down in a nearby warehouse thanks to an anonymous tip. Probably from someone who just couldn't stand to see such a fine piece of machinery in the hands of tasteless crooks. 17. From four-wheeled legends to legends of the diamond. A famous baseball bat, once wielded by the Sultan of SWAT himself, Babe Ruth, was stolen from a sports memorabilia store in Boston. This wasn't just any old piece of wood. It was valued at over $1 million. The theft was described as a brazen robbery, which usually means the thieves weren't exactly subtle. It was later recovered, rather fittingly, in a collector's private museum in Florida. Perhaps the collector just wanted to see if they could still hit a few homers with it. One hopes they wore gloves. 18. When the US Mint issues a limited edition gold coin weighing over 200 pounds, you'd think it would be pretty secure. Think again. This behemoth of a coin, valued at $1.2 million, was stolen from a museum in New York. The thieves weren't exactly ninjas. They used a ladder, ropes, and a wheelbarrow. Yes, a wheelbarrow. It's like a cartoon heist come to life. Tragically, the coin was reportedly melted down, making its recovery in original form impossible. Somewhere out there, someone might have a very, very heavy gold paperweight, or perhaps the world's most expensive doorstop. 19. Stealing Olympic gold medals? That's a special kind of low. A group of thieves broke into the home of a former track and field champion and made off with their hard-won medals. These weren't just valuable for their gold content. Their historical and personal significance was immeasurable. It's like stealing someone's dreams. Fortunately, the thieves weren't exactly criminal masterminds. The medals were recovered when they attempted to sell them to a pawn shop. You can just imagine the pawn shop owner's face. Olympic gold, you say? From a champion? And you just found them? 20. In Arizona, a 1,000-pound meteorite was stolen from a private collection. This wasn't just a rock. It was a visitor from outer space, valued at over $50,000. The theft happened in broad daylight from a museum, which suggests either incredible audacity or incredibly lax security. Perhaps the guards were distracted by a particularly shiny earth rock. The meteorite was later recovered after being sold to an unknowing collector who, presumably upon realizing their new garden ornament was an interstellar fugitive, reported it to the authorities. Good on them. 21. If stealing dinosaur eggs wasn't enough, how about an entire dinosaur skeleton? In 2015, a full dinosaur skeleton, a cool 75 million years old and worth an estimated $10 million, was pilfered from a private collection in Montana. How do you even begin to move a full dinosaur skeleton quietly? Do you disassemble it like a giant bony IKEA project? Authorities later discovered it had been sold to an anonymous buyer overseas, making its recovery virtually impossible. Somewhere out there, someone has a T-Rex in their living room, and we're all incredibly jealous and slightly terrified. 22. Floridians are known for their unique news stories, and this one doesn't disappoint. Thieves in the Sunshine State detached and stole an entire floating dock, valued at over $10,000. They didn't just drag it onto a truck, they floated it downriver. Resourceful, I'll give them that. It was later discovered tied to a private property, presumably by someone who suddenly found themselves with an unexpected waterfront extension. The owner joked that at least the thieves didn't take the water too. Always look on the bright side, even when your dock makes a run for it. 23. From floating docks to giant whale bones. In Alaska, a massive whale bone measuring over 25 feet was stolen from a museum. This bone had been on display for years and was part of an important research project. Imagine the logistics. All right, Bob, you get the front end, I'll get the, other front end? The thieves had to transport this colossal artifact in a truck, and it was eventually found at a local junkyard, a rather unceremonious end for part of a majestic sea creature. Perhaps they were hoping to start a very niche, very large dog chew business. 24. This next crime is rather sweet, in the most literal sense. Thieves in Vermont, the land of maple syrup, made off with 10,000 gallons of the sticky gold, worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. The heist reportedly took months to plan, involving siphoning the syrup from large storage tanks. Authorities dubbed it one of the sweetest crimes in the state's history, and you just know they were proud of that pun. One can only imagine the thieves are now living in a house made of pancakes, swimming in a pool of stolen syrup. 25. And finally, we venture into the truly ancient and slightly creepy. A rare ancient Egyptian mummy, believed to be over 3,000 years old, was stolen from a museum in Illinois. Along with the mummy, its elaborate burial items also vanished. This isn't just theft, it's grave robbing on an international and historical scale. What does one even do with a stolen mummy? Use it as a very quiet roommate? It was recovered months later, thankfully, after being found in a storage unit. Perhaps the thieves realized that reanimated pharaohs make for terrible house guests. 26. You'd think pieces of the Titanic would be, I don't know, at the bottom of the ocean or heavily guarded. But nope. A small piece of the ship's engine room, recovered from the wreck in the 80s and valued at over $5 million, was swiped from a museum in Las Vegas. Of all places, maybe the thief thought it would bring them luck at the craps table. It took years, but the artifact eventually surfaced in a private collection overseas. You know, just casually displaying a chunk of maritime disaster next to the fine china. The thief was eventually caught, probably trying to sell Rose's necklace next. 27. Forget stealing a car. In Michigan, someone stole an entire prefabricated house. Right off its foundation, while the owners were presumably on a very poorly timed vacation. The house was then transported to another state and sold to some incredibly unsuspecting buyers. Imagine signing the deed to your new home, only to find out it's technically a fugitive. Unsurprisingly, legal battles over who actually owned the peripatetic property dragged on for years. It's one thing to have your house foreclosed, it's another for it to be literally repossessed by a flatbed truck. 28. In a crime that feels like a confused cultural exchange program, a classic red telephone box from London, which had been happily chilling in California for decades, was abducted in the middle of the night. This iconic piece of Britishness, valued at over $50,000, that's a lot of quid, was carted away in a moving truck. Perhaps the thieves were hoping to make a direct call to the Queen? It was found a month later, abandoned at a construction site, looking rather forlorn and probably wondering where all the fog went. 29. Some thieves aim for gold, others for antique artillery. A Civil War-era cannon was stolen from a historical site in Virginia. This isn't your grandma's antique spoon. This was a genuine piece of 1860s heavy metal, a priceless artifact. The sheer audacity and muscle required to move such a hefty piece of history are baffling. Did they use a very strong group of friends or just a particularly ambitious forklift? It was recovered after a year-long investigation, presumably after someone noticed their neighbor's new, overly aggressive lawn ornament. 30. From the Civil War to the Viking Age. A rare Viking helmet, dating back to the 10th century, was pilfered from a museum in Minnesota, a state with no shortage of folks who appreciate a good horned helmet, historically inaccurate as they may be. This iron and bronze headpiece was a significant historical item. It eventually turned up in a pawn shop in another state, because where else would you offload ancient Scandinavian battleware? Tragically, it had been severely damaged, probably from someone trying to see if it fit over their baseball cap. 31. When you think of valuable things to steal in Utah, perhaps precious minerals come to mind. Or maybe a giant rock? Yes, thieves stole a 600-pound rock from a public park. This wasn't just any pebble, it was a large, unique rock, a beloved part of the park's landscape for decades. It was eventually found in a private yard, leaving everyone to ponder the eternal question, why? What possible motive could one have for nabbing a rock that requires a small crane to move? Maybe they were building a really authentic Flintstones playhouse. The mystery endures. 32. Stealing a piece of the moon. Let that sink in. A genuine moon rock, brought back by the Apollo 11 mission and part of the Smithsonian's collection in Washington, D.C., was stolen from a museum. This celestial souvenir was valued at a staggering $5 million. It was later recovered after being sold to an unsuspecting collector. How does one unsuspectingly buy a moon rock? Does it come with a certificate of "definitely not from Earth, wink wink"? Thankfully, this piece of the cosmos was returned, preventing an interstellar incident. 33. Florida strikes again. This time, thieves targeted a safe filled with rare and valuable coins, worth over $3 million. The safe was heisted from a private residence, and the culprits managed to break in without so much as a whisper to the alarm system. Smooth operators, or just very lucky. Most of the coins, however, didn't make it far. They were later found in a nearby pawn shop after a sting operation. It seems pawn shop owners in Florida have a very interesting acquisitions department. 34. Everything's bigger in Texas, including apparently the audacity of their thieves. A giant concrete cow sculpture weighing over 5,000 pounds, that's 2.5 tons of bovine artistry, was stolen from a farm. This brightly painted cow wasn't just farm decor, it was a popular roadside attraction. It was eventually found grazing in a private yard, with the new owner claiming it was merely a unique lawn ornament. Sure, pal, just like the Mona Lisa is a nice little portrait for the guest bathroom. 35. History buffs. Avert your eyes. A rare Confederate flag, dating back to the American Civil War, was swiped from a museum in Tennessee. This flag, valued at $1.5 million, wasn't just old fabric. It was a significant, if controversial, piece of American history. It was recovered years later, but alas, its time in hiding hadn't been kind. It suffered damage. Probably stored next to some moth-eaten Union uniforms for added irony. It's a stark reminder that some artifacts really do belong in a museum, not a thief's dusty attic. 36. Forget hot wiring a car. In Montana, a group of thieves stole an entire helicopter from a ranch. And they didn't just push it into a hangar, they flew it across several states. In broad daylight. The stolen aircraft, worth over $2 million, must have made for quite the spectacle. Imagine trying to explain that to air traffic control. After a long investigation, this rogue whirlybird was eventually tracked down and returned to its rightful owner, who probably invested in a much bigger padlock for their helipad. 37. For the musically inclined, this one's a sour note. A rare grand piano, once owned by a famous composer, was stolen from a concert hall in New York. This instrument, valued at over $1 million, wasn't just lifted, it was carefully removed from the venue during a performance. The sheer nerve. Were the thieves disguised as roadies with an unusually urgent gig? It was later recovered after being sold to an international buyer who, bless their innocent heart, had no idea they'd purchased a hot Steinway. 38. Texas. Land of oversized ambitions and apparently oversized poultry heists. Thieves made off with a 12-foot-tall metal rooster sculpture that proudly stood outside a local restaurant. This wasn't just some garden gnome. It was a beloved local landmark, the kind of place where people say, "Meet me by the giant chicken." It was eventually returned anonymously, perhaps by a gang of rooster rustlers who developed a sudden case of conscience or just got tired of it waking them up at dawn with its silent, metallic crowing. 39. Just when you thought Texas had run out of cows to steal, they go for a golden one. A golden cow figurine, worth a cool $1.5 million, was stolen from a religious temple in Texas. This wasn't just any trinket. It was made entirely of gold and considered a sacred artifact. It was found months later after being sold to a private collector who, in a recurring theme of delightful cluelessness, unknowingly purchased it from the thieves. Perhaps they thought it was a very fancy award for best-dressed bovine. 40. From sacred cows to legendary warriors. A Viking sword, estimated to be over 1,000 years old, was stolen from a museum in Norway. You know, the place Vikings actually came from. This sword, a relic discovered during an excavation, was a star of an archaeological exhibit. It later surfaced in the hands of an art dealer who was attempting to sell it on the black market. Because when you have a priceless, millennium-old weapon of war, the first place you think to offload it is a shady back alley, right? 41. Prehistoric purloining strikes again. A 12-inch dinosaur claw, part of a rare fossil collection, was stolen from a museum in Wyoming. This fossil, valued at over $1 million, had been painstakingly excavated. It was later recovered after being sold to a private collector, though it had been badly damaged. You have to wonder if the thief tried to use it to open particularly stubborn clamshell packaging. Some treasures are just too cool for clumsy criminals. 42. Classical music crime. A rare musical score, penned by none other than Ludwig van Beethoven, was stolen from a private collection in New York. This score, dating back to the early 19th century, wasn't just old paper. It was a priceless historical document, a direct link to a genius. It was later recovered after being traced to an international black market art dealer. One imagines this dealer also had a side hustle in stolen Stradivarius violins and Mozart's laundry lists. 43. Honest Abe himself wasn't safe. In Michigan, a 10-foot-tall bronze statue of Abraham Lincoln was stolen from a local park. This wasn't some garden gnome. It was a significant landmark. The statue's disappearance remained a mystery until a local scrap metal dealer received a rather unusual delivery. Lincoln, in several easily meltable pieces. A truly tragic end for the great emancipator, reduced to potential pennies. 47 years ago, our statues were safe. Not anymore. 44. For bibliophiles, this is a nightmare. In Chicago, thieves stole a collection of ancient manuscripts, some dating back to the 12th century. These weren't just old books. They were priceless documents, including religious texts and historical records, carefully removed from a library. Some of the manuscripts were later found in a foreign auction house, but tragically, some were never returned. Somewhere out there, a 12th century illuminated manuscript might be propping up a wobbly table, and that's just sad. 45. My precious. Indeed. A famous sword used in the movie The Lord of the Rings was stolen from a private collection in Los Angeles. This prop, valued at over $2 million, was an iconic piece from the beloved trilogy. It was recovered after the thief, presumably not a master of stealth like a hobbit, tried to sell it to a collector. You'd think the collector might ask, "Is this Sting, and does it glow blue when orcs or shady sellers are near?" 46. This one is just ghoulish. In Ohio, thieves stripped a cemetery chapel of its copper roofing, causing over $50,000 in damage. Stealing from a house of worship in a graveyard? That's a bold move, Cotton. The theft left the historic building exposed to the elements and, understandably, sparked outrage in the community. The stolen copper was never recovered, probably already transformed into untraceable pipes or pennies. At least they upgraded security, though it's a bit late for the roof. 47. If you're going to steal cars, why not steal a whole collection of classics? In California, thieves managed to swipe an entire fleet of rare classic cars worth millions. We're talking vintage Ferraris and Porsches, loaded onto transport trucks and vanishing like a puff of exhaust smoke. After a nationwide search that must have been every car enthusiast detective's dream, most of the vehicles were found in a shipping container, probably en route to some billionaire's secret underground garage overseas. 48. Viva Las Vegas and Viva Grand Larceny. A diamond-encrusted necklace worth a jaw-dropping $25 million was stolen from a high-end jewelry store. This wasn't just sparkly. It was adorned with hundreds of diamonds, including a large, rare blue one, the kind that usually has a curse attached. The thieves made a clean getaway, but the necklace later surfaced when it was offered for sale in another country. Apparently, what happens in Vegas sometimes gets fenced internationally. 49. Texas, one last time for the road, with another case of statue snatching. A large bronze statue of a horse was stolen from a local park. This majestic equine, standing over 10 feet tall and weighing several tons, was an important public art piece. It was eventually found in a private yard, but the thief had already started melting down parts of it for scrap metal. From proud steed to ingots, a truly tragic transformation. One hopes the remaining parts told naysayers where the rest of it went. And there we have it. 49 exhibits of, let's call it misplaced ambition and questionable life choices. Now, be brutally honest. Which of these heists made you think, okay, that's just impressively weird, and which one made you snort your drink out your nose? More importantly, if you had unlimited resources and zero morals, which of these bizarre items would you swipe? And what elaborate, nonsensical plan would you devise? Spill your hypothetical criminal genius in the comments below. And if this level of societal bewilderment is your jam, smash that like button and subscribe for more. Don't make us send the inflatable Santa after you.